Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coding for Beginners. Build a website to track your New Year's resolutions. I know we all made them, and so how do we keep track of them? Emily Palmquist here is going to show you how to build a website that can do that for you. My name is Tiffany Webb. I'm the Director of Product Marketing and Events here at Flatiron, and I am the host for this evening, or MC, better yet, MC. I am not a technical person, so please bear with me. I will try to funnel as many questions as I can over to Emily, from the chat or the Q&A. So please note, I might not see all of them. Sometimes the chat goes really fast. No one's ignoring you. I just may have missed it. So please ask again or throw it in the Q&A and I can get around to it. What else? This event is being recorded and will be disseminated to you guys within 48 hours of the end of the recording. And with that, I would like to present our wonderful instructor, Emily Palmquist, who is a cohort lead for our software engineering program, and she will be your lovely instructor for today. Emily, it's all you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Palmquist. I'm a cohort lead here at Flatiron School. I've been here for 2 years, but I've been here a little longer than 2 years because I actually went through the program myself here. I was a student at Flatiron School. As soon as I graduated, I got hired on as a coach. And so I helped coach people through the program, helped answer technical questions. And now I'm a cohort lead and I help with learning the concepts. So I'm glad to be here with you all today. And like Tiffany said, I'm going to be we're going to be building out a web page to track New Year's resolutions. So let's get started. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Tiffany, if you can give me a thumbs up, letting me know you can see my screen with the PowerPoint.
Looks good.
All right. So let me go ahead and put this in slideshow. So here we go. All right, again, my name's Emily. I already introduced myself, but here's some information. I'll share that along with you all to get in contact with me if you need to, or if you'd like to say hi, always open to that. And our agenda for the day. All right, so today we're going to be going over HTML, CSS, and a tiny bit of JavaScript. So as you can see over here, on the right side of this slide, right next to my HTML, I have this skeleton. HTML is really the backbone of a web page. It's that skeleton, the structure of it. Next to our CSS, you can see this little Elvis, he's got some style. CSS is what gives a style to our web page. And JavaScript, it gives us that action. It allows us to do things like if you go on a social media website or something and you click a like button, it increases a like. That is a lot of the time with JavaScript. So that's the kind of stuff we're going to be going over today. But let's first start out with some HTML. So some of you may have heard HTML before. If not, we're totally going to go into it a little bit. I'm going to show you the documentation because documentation is so important as a developer. So we're going to dive deep a little bit into that and implement some of the stuff in our web page that we're reading about in the documentation. So what is HTML? Well, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. I was really confused by that. I was like, what is hypertext? Hypertext is just it's links that connect web pages together. So it just connects everything together. And markup is something that we use to annotate text, images, and other content for display on the web. So that's what HTML stands for. And HTML has elements, and these elements are the building blocks of a web page. It's what gives it that structure, what creates that skeleton. These elements are represented by tags, which tags, what are those? It's so confusing. I remember when I started, I was I didn't know any HTML. I didn't know anything. And with HTML, the tags, you can see down here, here's an example. So this tag right here, there's an opening, a starting tag, and an ending tag. And you can see the ending tag has that / in it. And there's some information in between. Oops, let's go back to that. There's some content in between those tags. This is the content. So with the tags, we have an opening tag, some content in between, and a closing tag. So At this point, I want to go ahead and we'll go over to Google. And sorry, let me move these Zoom controls out of the way. And let's all, if you're following along also, I am going to be coding on CodePen. So if you go to codepen.io, I think /pen, Tiffany will go ahead and share that link with you all if you want to code along. You'll end up opening up to something like this when you click on that link. So I'm going to be coding in here, but let's go over to Google and let's Google HTML elements. And MDN, I would also include MDN in there. Those are our Mozilla development documentation. Like these are super important. It's going to have so much information for us on HTML, CSS, and so many different things. And as a developer, reading these documentations is going to be really, really, really important. So today we're going to like look at it a little bit, and it's going to look foreign. There's going to be so many words that you don't understand possibly if you're just getting started, and that's okay. Like we're going to walk through it together a little bit, and hopefully by the end you'll be able to go to these HTML elements and kind of maybe be able to try to implement them into your own web page. So let's go back again. So I Googled HTML elements MDN, and there's this first link right here, HTML elements reference, and the developer.mozilla.org. So if I click on that, we can come over here to this web page. All right, on this web page, they list out a ton of HTML elements. So we're going to kind of go through some of these and implement them into our web page. We won't be able to get through all of them, so I highly recommend you to take a look at this documentation and like try to implement some. So first thing we're going to start out with is this HTML tag. So HTML, the element represents the root or top level element of an HTML doc. It's also referred sometimes as the root element, and everything in our HTML will go within that HTML. It'll be a descendant of that HTML tag. So let's go ahead and implement this HTML tag in our docs. If you're on CodePen, there is 3 different sections. There's a HTML, there's a CSS, and a JavaScript portion. This tool allows us, it gives us access to HTML file, a CSS file, JavaScript file, and it will display it below once we start implementing stuff. So if you're new to this, it's okay. Like we're going to walk through it a little bit. We're not going to really be using the JavaScript portion, so you can kind of just pull that off to the side. We're really just going to be mainly focusing on the HTML and CSS section. This tool also links these files together for us. So there's going to be a certain point in our presentation where I'm going to explain the concept, but this tool is doing it for us. So yeah, we'll get there. But in the HTML portion on this website, this is where we're going to start implementing our HTML elements. So we just looked at this HTML elements reference, and we looked at this HTML element, which is our main element, the root element of our web page. So let's go ahead and type that out. So again, our opening tag has a forward or a less than and a greater than sign. And within that is the name. So our HTML opening tag is right there.
Hey, Emily, sorry to interrupt. Quick question. Is it possible to make the font, like the size of your screen a little bit bigger?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry about that. Is that
No
better?
problem. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay. And then, so we have our opening tag. We also need our closing tag. So our closing tag has that less than sign with a /, our element name, and then the closing, our greater than sign. So we just implemented our first element, the HTML element. We're already starting to develop or write HTML, which is really cool. That's one element we're done with. So again, that's like the root element of our HTML doc. It's going to be wrapping every other element. So every other element we're going to put within the opening and closing tag. Okay. let's head on back over to this documentation, the Mozilla Docs, and let's scroll down. So we got our main root. Let's take a look at this document metadata. So the metadata, it contains information about the web page.
Oh,
So
sorry, there was a quick question. Does does the case matter in the writing of the?
Yeah, keep it lowercase, HTML.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. No, any questions, please interrupt. Like, I don't know, it makes it more fun for me when you do. It's more interactive. So
got it.
All right. Document metadata. So again, this contains important information. So like it'll include links to our style sheets or our title of our web page. So if you see up here, this title in our tab, that's the title of our web page. So in the metadata, that's included in there, and a bunch of other stuff. So if we look at these elements that we can use that are available in the metadata, we're not really going to go over this one. We will go over head, a link, and style and title. So meta we won't really use as much, but we're for sure going to go over these ones. Right now, let's go over the head. So if you click on this and like, let's open it up another tab. This actually links to the documentation on that head element. And it'll include so much like really in detail information on it. But the important part is this HTML element, it contains like our metadata, our machine readable information, important stuff in our web docs. So like our titles, scripts, style sheets, all of that. So let's go ahead and include that in our little project we're building out, our little web page we're building out. So again, everything goes within the HTML opening and closing tag. So our head element is going to go in here. So we need an opening and we need a closing, just like that. Inside this head tag, this head element, we can include all these other metadata elements. So like our link, which we'll come back to, and our style we'll come back to. But let's go ahead and implement the title one. So the title element defines the document's title. And again, it's shown up here in the tab, and it's the browser's title bar. Okay, and an important part, it only contains text. Tags within the element are ignored. So let's go ahead and go in here. Let's go ahead and create that title element, opening tag, and a closing tag. And within it, it can only be text, no tags. So we can't put another title tag element or anything like that in here. Like, nope, it ignores that. It's only text. So for this one, the title of this web page is maybe like New Year's resolutions. I don't know. Since we're building this out. With this tool, you won't be able to, let's see, did I spell it right? Resolutions. My spelling is sometimes a struggle, so bear with me on that. Okay, so our title is New Year's resolutions. Right now, you won't be able to see that because of this CodePen app that we're in. But if you were building it out in VS Code and you opened up an HTML file here, you would see it up top. All right, so we just we implemented that title element. Let's see, let's go back over here to our elements. And again, we're going to come back to the link and style a little bit later. So let's go ahead and scroll down. A sectioning root. This is another important tag, just like that head tag, that head element, that it surrounds all of the important metadata elements. This body one is going to contain everything that we're actually going to see on our web page. So we can go ahead and implement this into our HTML as well.
There's a
We don't,
couple of
yeah,
questions in the chat.
yeah.
Do you have to use exclamation point doc type HTML? Uh, if you want to look in the chat, I'm not sure if I'm saying
Yeah.
that correctly.
Yeah, you don't absolutely have to, especially in this CodePen IO. It is good to include that. Like it's pretty common to include it, but for our purposes right now, we're not going to include that. We're not going to talk too much about that. But I definitely recommend taking a look at some of the documentation, like Googling. Let's see, let's just do a practice Google because it's an important skill to developers, Googling. So let's try something Google. So doc type HTML or something like that. And I love the Mozilla documentation, so that's what I would go to. And take a look at this documentation. Some of it may not make sense at all, and that's okay. The more you learn, the more like vocab, your vocab's going to expand, and the more you're going to understand these. But yeah, for the purposes of our little demo today, we're not going to go too much in depth on that.
All right. And then another question says, can you put an apostrophe or should we not put punctuation for like New Year's? Like, will
Oh yeah,
that
you could totally like that. Yep, you totally do that. Totally okay.
Perfect. And then last question is, are we going to do any JavaScript? I know she mentioned pushing the JavaScript portion aside.
Yeah, we're going to go a little bit into JavaScript. We're not going to be implementing it over here in a JavaScript file. It's going to be just within our HTML file. We're going to be adding like an event listener to an element that's going to trigger something on the web page.
And then final question, I'll let you get back to instructing.
Yeah.
Is it okay to use Notepad for HTML?
Notepad. Is that like the app on Mac?
Yeah, I think it's just like the blank screen on, I don't know if it's Mac or it's not a text editor. Notepad is very old school. VS Code is yeah.
I mean, you could practice writing HTML in it. I don't know if you will be able to display that in the web page.
Got it.
In a browser. Yeah.
Cool.
But you could practice typing out HTML tags and stuff, but you won't be able to see it like you will here.
Got it.
For sure.
Perfect.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. So again, let's go back to that, implementing that body tag. In our HTML, this is where our metadata is within the head. So just below that, but within our HTML tags, we're going to go ahead and implement our body tag. So an opening and a closing. Okay. So within this body tag is where like all of the elements, we're going to include all the elements that are going to be, we want to be displayed. Wait, let me say that again. Inside this body tag, we're going to include all the elements that we want displayed on our web page. So this is just metadata, some information that other software uses and stuff, but this in the body is what's actually going to be displayed on our web page. So what can we display in a body? What elements are available? There is content sectioning elements. So allow you to organize the document content in logical pieces. So kind of help you like create that like structure a little bit. And then within those like different sections and stuff, you can include other tags. So some that we're going to go over first. Let's go over the heading tags. So HTML, these are HTML elements. There's 6 different levels. So H1, H2, H3, 4, 5, all the way to 6. H1 is the highest, while H6 is the lowest. So when you go about using these in an HTML documentation, you always want to make sure you're going in like the order. So you're not going like you're creating an H1 tag and then an H5 tag, but you don't have an H2, 3, 4, or any of those tags. So you're skipping a bunch of tags. You don't want to do that. It's not good practice. I mean, you can, but it's not good practice to do that. So that's one important thing with heading tags. Another one, H1 should really only be used one time in your HTML. And let's actually look at what the H1 tag. Let's actually take a look here. If we look at the documentation, let's see. If they were implemented, it'd be able to use multiple H1s. It's not super important right now. But H1 tags is really like the most important, like the title or the like purpose of the content. So that's what H1 is. And then as you go down, H2, like you can have a couple more of those. Then H3, a little bit more, kind of like a pyramid structure of like the heading tags. So there should only be one H1. So really small top. And as you go down in the structure, you create, you can use more and more in your application.
There's a question in the chat. Is there any other metadata that you find useful in putting in the headers?
Yeah, there's a lot of other metadata. For today, we're not going to really go over those. Like the meta tag, that's a really good one to go look into as well. So if you click on that, you can take a look at it, read the documentation on it. But for today, we're not going to go too much into those.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, so let's go ahead and copy these. So there's like a bunch of our heading tags. So in H1, H2, H3, 4, 5, 6, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to bring it over here to the body. And when I paste it in, notice how down below now we have all those, like the content being displayed. And notice how the heading 1 is like larger, it takes up more room. One really important thing is don't use the H1 tag just because you want the font really big. It's bad practice to do that. So we'll use CSS and we'll go into that and how you can change the font size. But for semantic HTML, H1 tag should just be like the really important content, and you can size that however you want with CSS. But don't use it because you want the font really big. Okay. For now, let's take out the 3 through 6. And in our H1 tag, we want this to be like our main purpose of this page, which it is our 2022 New Year's resolutions. Okay. And now in this H2, I can include some other content. Like maybe I want to include it like my name, because these are my 2022 New Year's resolutions. Okay, you can see they're displayed below. Maybe also on this page, since it is a web page to track New Year's resolutions, we want to be able to list them all out. So let's go ahead and take a look back at our HTML element reference. And if we take a look at this text content, there is this ordered list and unordered list tags. An ordered list is an ordered list of items, and they're rendered with a number listed next to it. An order list is just bulleted points, like the ordering doesn't really matter. I would use an ordered list if the points that you're putting within that list are important in the order that they're going. But if the ordering doesn't matter, change it to an unordered list. So with New Year's resolutions, like there's no particular order for the resolutions that I'm going to make. So I'm going to go ahead and use this unordered list tag, this unordered list element. So within our body, below our H2, I'm going to go ahead and implement that unordered list. So opening tag and a closing tag. And UL. Go. Okay. So within an unordered list, in order to get those bullet points, like with different items in the list, we have to use another tag. This LI tag right here. The LI HTML element is to represent an item in a list. So for every like goal we have or New Year's resolution, we should include a bullet an LI with the content of that LI being our resolution. And those LIs should be within the unordered list or an ordered list. For both of those tags, the LIs would be within them. And let's go ahead and just like create an ordered list as well so we can see the difference. So we need LI tags, an opening and a closing. And within it will be our first resolution. And you know what? Our first resolution is build a web page. And notice how with the unordered list, when I put an LI, it put a bulleted point. If we copy this and move it within our ordered list, you could see that it includes a number next to it. So biggest difference between unordered list and ordered list is just those. This one is bulleted, this one is ordered. So in this case, again, because the ordering of our New Year's resolutions doesn't really matter. We're going to use an unordered list, yeah. Okay, maybe we have another New Year's resolution. Like let's learn, let's create that LI opening tag, LI closing tag. And then the content in between is what I want to be displayed in this list. And it will be to learn JavaScript. Okay, we can see there's both of the points down below. And you know what, like with building a web page, there's different like resolutions within that I have to implement, or like goals that I need to do in order to meet that one. So I want on my page to have this build a web page, but then underneath it, like tabbed in, to have some more like goals and resolutions that have to be implemented in order to meet that bigger goal. Because to meet a goal, I always break it down into smaller goals, and it helps achieve that bigger goal. So a way we can do that is you can actually nest other unordered lists or ordered lists within an unordered list or an ordered list. So, I mean, again, the ordering of the goals or resolutions I have to make in order to build a web page, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go ahead and implement another unordered list. Just like that. And within that unordered list, I can add other LIs, which will be more bullet points of new goals to meet this bigger goal. So let's just go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and actually let's practice. I feel like with coding, in order to like remember and be able to recall, is typing out a lot of the time, again, rather than copying and pasting. Don't copy and paste a lot because you can run into a lot of bugs. So I'm doing a lot of bad things with that when I did that right now. So let's not do that. Okay, so we need to create an LI. So an opening tag.
There's a quick question. How do you comment in HTML again?
Yeah, so one shortcut on Mac is you can do Command / and it will go ahead and comment it out for you. That's a shortcut. I don't know what it is on Windows. I'm sorry. It might just be like Control / or I don't know. But you can see once you do that, there is this less than with a exclamation point and 2 dashes or hyphens.
Owen in the chat said it for Windows would be Control /. So you have that.
Perfect.
And then a couple of people are asking can you expand the HTML screen a little bit? Is it possible?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry about that. There you go. Is that a little better?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No worries. Thanks for the questions. Okay. So in this unordered list, you can see I already started the LI, so we can see there's a bullet point below, but let's go ahead and put the closing tag, that closing LI. In order to build a web page, we have to learn some HTML. So learn HTML, hypertext markup language. And we can see it's below, tabbed in that unordered list. And another thing we're going to need to learn is we're going to need to learn some CSS. So there's that tag. And for the closing, I forgot my / and notice what it did here. it created another bullet point because it thought this was an opening tag, but I want that to be the closing. All right, let's do the same thing for JavaScript. Let's create an unordered list there. And within that unordered list, we need another li, a list item. And to learn JavaScript, some variables, learning about variables is important. Let's create another one, li. Learning about data types is important. And last one, let's just create one more. I mean, there's a lot of other important things for JavaScript, but let's say functions. Okay. And we can see now on our web page, we have that structure. We have our main like heading of the page, which is our 22 New Year's resolutions. We have another heading like these are my New Year's resolutions. Could have like another H2 with somebody else's, but for now this is just my resolutions. Okay. So now we have the basic structure. I think there was a couple more elements I want to go over too. Let's go over this header. So this represents introductory content. So what we want at that top of that page, which you know what, like this is really like an introductory. I want that like at the top of my page. It's important. Like these are my New Year's resolutions at the bottom below. So a way we can implement this, and again, this is one of those content sectioning, helps us organize the document content into logical pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap both of these because this web page is my New Year's resolutions, that important content. I'm going to put an opening header tag above that H1 in the H2. And then below that, we're going to go ahead and close that header tag. Didn't change a whole lot on our web page, as you can see right here, but it helps kind of separate, like this is the important heading of this page. And the other one I want to go over is this main, which represents the dominant content of the body of the document. So our goals, that's the important like dominant part of the document. So we can go ahead and wrap those, that unordered list in a main tag. So right below our header, we can open that main tag. And I want all of these to be within that main tag. So let's go ahead and close it right here. Okay. And with like a styling thing of formatting code, I always love to tab in stuff that's within an element. It just makes it visually easier for me to see. And if somebody else, another developer comes and looks at your code, they'll be able to tell, oh, okay, like this is all like within that main tag. Just makes it easier to visually see and read the code. Be done a lot quicker. Okay, so like that's what our web page looks like right now. But it's not pretty at all, but it's a structure. Like we got the skeleton built out. So let's go ahead and come back over to our slideshow. And let's go to the next section. So CSS is that important part that gives your web page that style. It makes it look pretty. If you remember from the beginning, that little Elvis, it gives it the style of the web page. It makes it look good versus just having a skeleton. So like what does CSS stand for? It stands for cascading style sheets. So with CSS, everything's read top to bottom of the file. And as you go down in the page, it could possibly overwrite stuff that's written above if you're targeting the same element that you're saying like, this heading, I want it to be colored red. But then later on down in the CSS file, you say, I want it to be blue. It's going to take on that blue because that's later on in the file. It's going to go from top to bottom. It's going to cascade down. What CSS does is it describes how those HTML elements are to be displayed. So again, it gives it that style. It makes it look like Elvis versus just a skeleton. How many ways are there to write CSS? So there's 3 different ways. We're going to go through all 3 today. One of them is inline, internal, and external, and we'll go through those in the code. Won't go into much detail right now. But with CSS, in order to write it, we create rule sets. Sorry about that. We create rule sets. What is a rule set? If you take a look over at this image right here, this is a rule set. So there's different portions of this rule set. There's the selector. In this case, they selected a p tag, which is an HTML element. If we had a p tag somewhere in our documentation, like maybe here in the main body, we had a p tag that says, hello world. It would select this tag right here because it's p tag. And then after that selector, there's curly braces. And within those curly braces, there is declarations. And with a declaration, there's 2 parts, the property and the property value. The property, there's so many different ones. If we go to our CSS, let's say CSS properties, and let's look at MDN. There is just so many different ones. There's so many different properties that you can include. There's color, display, just so many different ones. Font weight, font size, padding left. And don't expect to remember all of those. Like, that's impossible. Like, I mean, it may be possible, but it's just too much. Don't remember all of them, but be able to Google. That's why Googling and looking and reading those documentations is so important, and why I'm really emphasizing that right now today. And I want to go back actually to the selector. You can't only just select by a tag or an element. You can also select by an ID and a class name. So let's come over here to our HTML. And in our HTML, we can add different attributes to these. Of ID, we can also add an attribute of class name or class. There's a lot of different ones, but these ones are like really commonly used with CSS selectors. So if I say the ID of this is name, and with IDs, with these attributes, the value of it should be unique for your HTML page. So no other HTML element in my HTML doc should have that same ID. So only this H2 should have that ID of name. But with classes, a bunch of different elements can have the same class name. That one's okay. So we could add a class name of, I don't know, what do we say? Just text or something? I don't know, just some kind of class name. And a way you would select those, like select, I want this H2 with an ID in CSS. You would, in your selector, you would do a hash in front of it if it's an ID. So if we're trying to select by the ID of name, we put a hash and a name, and then curly braces for our rule set. So hash for name or IDs. And for a class, we use dot. So in this case, our class name is text, So we'll use a docs as a class and text.
Can class and ID names be any random word?
Yeah. You can have these. Typically, you'll see them separated by hyphens. Let's say name text. I don't know, like a hyphen in between. But yeah, you can put anything you wanted here. I could say potato. In my cohorts, I always use potato as an example. Like, you can call us anything you want. You can say potato. And so, yeah, just keeping it going. So you can call those whatever you want, but since I changed that class now, instead of text, it would be potato. All right, so 3 different ways, common ways of selecting tags. So ID, class, and the HTML tag. You can also select multiple tags at once. You can separate each one by a comma. So like maybe the H2, the H1, and the LIs. I all want some kind of styling on all of those to be the same. You can do that. Let's go ahead and go over first inline styling. So, and let me take this out because I don't like it there on my webpage. That was just an example. I want to style this. I want the background. So this 2022 New Year's resolutions to have a background color and the font to be a different color. So we can go ahead and write inline styling to this H1. This isn't super common and it's kind of like stay away from it, but I want you all to see that it is a way to style. So what you'll do is add a style attribute equals and then a string. Within this style, you will add a property and a property value. So if we look back at our example, property and property value. We don't have to use a selector because we're already on the tag that we're wanting to style. We're saying, give it the styling that I'm going to say. So maybe I want a color, so font color, or let's do background color. So background color is one property you can do. Background color. And I want the background color. Let's find a color actually. A way you can find a color is on Chrome. You can search color picker. There's actually this color picker right here, which is really cool. You know, I kind of like this color. Kind of like almost like a blue, like a sky blue. No, it's kind of a cool color. So there's different ways you can copy this color. An easy way is just this hex right here. So I can go ahead and copy that. And if I come over here, I can go ahead and paste that in as my background color. And you can see it changes the background of that to that color. You can also add like a color of, maybe we want the color, like the font color to be white. And I think, is it separated by space? Or maybe we can go over an example of no longer inline styling, but using like an internal style. So then again, I mentioned there's 3 different types. One, inline. This is an example of inline. Another one would be internal. For internal styling, it's in this HTML doc. And there is a specific HTML element we can use for that. So we come back over here, we scroll up. There's this style element right here. This style element we can include in that metadata section within the head of our doc. And within that tag, we can use rule sets in there. We can write rule sets. So we come over here into the head. We can start that style opening tag. And we can use style closing tag. So within this opening and closing tag, I can write CSS rule sets. So if I want to target this H1 and I want to add a color property, and I want that color's properties value to be white, I can target the H1 tag followed by curly braces. And within it, I write my declaration. So my property of color and the value, let's say white. And with every declaration you make, you always want to end it with a semicolon. If you don't have that semicolon and I added other stuff, it wouldn't work. It would give us errors. So you always want to have that semicolon after saying this is the end of that declaration. And then I'm going to write other declarations below it, possibly. Another one, maybe we don't want the title to be over here to the left. Maybe we want it in the center. There is a text align property. And we could say align the text in the center. And we can see that it aligned it in the center, which is cool. Starting to look a little bit better. It's no longer just that structure, the skeleton. I can make this look however I want it. That's like a really cool thing about CSS is it can be a pain sometimes to implement. Like it's tough to learn and tough to implement, but it makes a web page like so much better. You can add your own style to it as well. So really cool. Okay, next, let's maybe we can also add a center on my name, so that H2 tag. But let's go ahead and do this with external styling. So external styling is when it's not written in your HTML. You could have it in a separate CSS file, like over here. In this case, with the tool we're using, they link the CSS and the HTML for us, but I will show you how to link those two files together if you're in like VS Code or you just have two separate files. With external, you can also get code, like access a CSS file that somebody else wrote and it's available on the internet. So you just talk to a server, and a server is just a computer, and it can give you, it has that styling. And so you can add that styling into your web page. But we're not going to go over that one today. We're just going to do an external CSS file that we are writing here. Okay, we come back over to this metadata section. I mentioned that we would go back over the link. So this link element specifies relationship between the current document and an external resource. So this could be a style sheet, it could be icons, it can be a lot of different things. In this case, we're going to use it for our CSS style. But again, I did say that they already linked these for us, so I'm still going to go over it and how you would do that. Okay, so with a link, we need that link tag. And let's look at the documentation because that's a good thing to get into. Okay, we can see here that it has an href attribute and a relation attribute. This is where we're just telling it, this is a style sheet that we're going to link to this HTML file. And it has an href. This href, we want it to be the name of the CSS file, .css, or wherever that CSS style sheet that you're looking to implement into your app or link with your app, wherever it's located. So let's come back over here. We have our link tag. It needs an href and it needs a relationship. So imagine this CSS file was called style.css, and it's within the same directory, or it's in the same folder as our HTML. We can just go ahead and put style.css, just the name of that file. And then the relationship, it should say, this is a style sheet. That's what the relationship of this link to our HTML. And you could have multiple, like maybe you have multiple style sheets. Maybe you have one called style.css and you have another, and it's bad to copy paste, but I'm just doing it for the sake of time. We have another called like index.css. Like you can include multiple links to different style sheets in your HTML. But this tool already does that for us. I'm going to keep it there actually and just comment it out. Okay, so let's go ahead and use the CSS file. We would have had to do a link to that CSS file if we were on our own computer, but this tool does that for us. So just imagine we have it linked. Yeah.
There's a quick question. When would you use internal versus external style sheets?
Yeah, I would say external is the recommended best practice to do, but internal is totally available. So either this way or inline, which is like this one. But again, I think this, we really say stay away from, like inline, only if you really need to. And then this one, like it's okay, but again, it's better to use an external style sheet. Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, let's go ahead and select this H2 over here in our style sheet. Let's take these out. And it has an ID of name. So I'm going to go ahead and select that with a hash or hashtag or a pound symbol for an ID, followed by the name of that ID. So this one, the value of it is name. So name. And then curly braces. And there's our rule set start. And in here, we need different declarations. So I want this one to also be centered. So I could say text align center here. Totally could do that. And there it line sit center. Another thing I can do, since I need both this H1 and the H2 to have text align center, I could instead add another element that I want to add the same styling to, so that H1. And so we can go ahead and take out this text align center there. Oops, come on. There we go. Can move that there, and we can see it is still all centered now because we've selected both elements here with this rule set, both the element with the ID of name and the H1 element. And we've told it align the text in the center. So there is the spacing right here also. If I think we can't really do it on here, but there is a way to inspect your web page, which is going into too much. Maybe we shouldn't go down this rabbit hole, actually. But we could.
I'm sorry, go ahead, finish your sentence.
No, go ahead.
Do we need to have CSS file extension .css?
Yeah. Yep. A CSS file needs to have that .css at the end. Same with HTML, needs that .html. And JavaScript needs that .js for JavaScript. Great question. Okay. So with elements, like an H1 element, the browser already has some styling that it adds to that H1 element. And with this one in particular, it adds a margin up top and a margin on bottom, which if we look at CSS box model, and let's actually go, well, that's fine. We'll just do this. You could see here is the content. So what we have displayed, here, this 2022 New Year's resolution. There is some padding. So we can put between like where our tag ends, like the border, which the border would be like this, where this blue text ends, because that color, background color, adds up until the border. And the margin is what like is outside that border. So we're putting spacing between it and any other element or anything on the page. So on our page, maybe I don't want that much spacing below my H1. I don't want as much margin. We can go, since we're already selecting it here, let's go ahead and add, we'll add that declaration here for that. So I can say margin dot bottom as my property. And I could say maybe like 10 pixels. So only 10 pixels below that, or maybe even smaller. Let's see what 5 pixels margin looks like. And it doesn't look like it changed it too much. But yeah, you can change different things that are already set for that element as well with CSS. And let's see, what else can we do? Maybe we want the font size of this to be bigger for our H1. Or actually for our this other tag, this H2, we want the font to be a little bit smaller because I don't want it that big. I don't want to change to another heading tag like an H4 or something just because I want the size smaller, the size of the font smaller. I'm going to keep it as an H2, but I'm going to change it in the CSS. So we can either select by the tag, or we can select by the ID. But let's select by the class name, which we have as potato on there. And in this rule set for the class of potato, I can say, I want the font size to be, what do I want this font size to be? Maybe like 20 pics or so. I think that might, let's try that out. We can test it out. All right, that looks better. I kind of like that. It's a little bit smaller, doesn't take as much focus away from our title or main heading here. All right, what else can we style? You know what? Ooh, we can add a background image, like a background image to this whole page, like the main content. So I can actually select the body. And I can add a background image or a background color or something to our page. So with a background image, you can say background image is our property. And the value needs to be a URL. So URL and then parentheses. And within those parentheses will be a string of the URL. And I actually had one picked out because I saw it the other day on my momentum, the image that pops up when I come here. So I really liked it. So I'm going to include that as my background image. So string with that URL. And it looks like I already have a string there. So let's remove the extra quote set. And if we save this, let's see, background image, let's put that semicolon there. And it should be showing up, but it doesn't look like it is. Not sure what's going on here, but let's try refreshing it, actually. Cancel, let's save. It's still not showing up. Maybe that image is gone, I don't know. Okay, we'll just hold off on the background image. We'll say like background, maybe we want a background color. And we want this to be, I kind of like color green, so maybe we'll do another color picker. I don't know. Let's say like that color. Let's just try it out. It may not be pretty. I really wanted to have a background image, but we'll go with it. Okay. Oh, and that's why. Just realized why it wasn't working. I messed up on my selector. Notice I put a semicolon there. That's not part of our rule set. We don't want a semicolon after. So let me go back to what I had here with that URL. And let's remove that semicolon or that colon. All right, there we go. There's the image.
Awesome. Someone asked, can a blank row be added between the dark bullets?
So I guess like your build your web page and learn JavaScript.
A blank row.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
like
with spacing, I guess.
yeah, we would add that with CSS. So we could definitely go into that if you all want to. But that would be CSS, like targeting maybe this LI and making sure there's padding around it, or even this one below. So that would be done with CSS, and we could definitely do that if we have some time, because we are getting low on time and I want to make sure we save time for questions. But let's go ahead and notice how it's repeating. Like I don't want it to repeat. I just want it to be just one time, just one image there the whole way. So I could say background dash repeat, and I can say no repeat. So it doesn't repeat, but now it's not covering our full page. So we can add another property. So we can call that property background size, and we can have it cover the whole page. And there we go. All right. Can't really see the whole image because of how big I have it zoomed in, but it is a really pretty picture. Okay. Next thing, let's go ahead and add some styling to that for us. Let's go ahead and target this one unordered list, so we can give it maybe let's give it an ID, or let's give it, yeah, let's just give it an ID, and let's call this goals list. Oops. Goals list. And in our CSS file, if we want to target that, we use that pound followed by the name. So goals list and the curly braces. Okay. Maybe we want our goals list to have a background color. Let's just say, no, white is too much. Let's say the same color as the heading. Keep it consistent. So let's go ahead and copy that color. Paste it over here. Okay. Huh? It's looking okay. It's getting there, what I was looking for, but not quite. It's taking up too much room of the web page. So I want to narrow it down a little bit. So we can say there's a width property. We can use like different widths. We could use pixels, we can use EMs, RMs, but I'm going to go ahead and use a percentage, and I want it to take up 50% of the parent. So if we say takes up 50%, later on I would want to center it, but I'm going to hold off on that so we can get into a little tiny bit of JavaScript. But right now, is there any other questions on HTML or CSS?
One question. How do you, so it looks like the person missed it. How do you link the CSS with the HTML code again?
Yeah, okay, so the link tag. So with the link tags, you have an href attribute, which will be equal to wherever you can find that CSS file. With this tool we have, it links them automatically for us. So that's why I don't have that link in here. But if you had a folder on your computer and you're in VS Code, which is just a text editor, and you have an HTML file and a CSS file, and they're both within that same folder, you could just include the name of that CSS file as the href. And this rel attribute stands for relationship. And what's the relationship of this link to this HTML documentation? Not documentation, the HTML document. And this is a style sheet. We're adding CSS to it. We're styling with it. Let's go ahead and go back to our slideshow. let's talk we're only going to have a little bit of time, like maybe like 5 minutes to talk about JavaScript. But this is like a really, really important part to give it that that action, giving your HTML or your web page something to do. Like it does something. Like you can like something, you can cross out something, you can add a new attribute or something. So JavaScript is a programming language for the web. We use it, or it could be used to update and change HTML and CSS. And it just allows us to create dynamic content and web applications. So today we're going to talk a tiny bit about just defining a function, so in JavaScript. And with HTML, a way you can write JavaScript is with a script tag. So if we scroll down, or we do a Command F on here, and we search for script, and we should be able to find it here. There we go. All right. Used to embed executable code or data, and also refer to JavaScript code. Okay, let's see what it looks like. They have an example here. Don't think they have an example. Oh yeah, they do. Okay, so we can see that the script tag has an opening and closing tag, and the opening tag has this attribute of source. The source is where your JavaScript file, or your JavaScript file. So if you had a index.js file, your source would be index.js if it's within that same folder as the HTML file. But you can also write it without a source and write JavaScript in between the opening and closing tags. So that's what we're going to do today. If we come over to our web page, we can, so you really want to, you could write it in the head or at the bottom of the body. Both ways will work. There are some like instances where if you put it in here at the top and you don't say, wait until the whole document is loaded and then run the script, then you may have problems in your JavaScript file. But for our purposes, we're not going to have any problems with that today. So let's go ahead and create that opening script tag and the closing script tag, which this needs a /. There we go. And now we can write JavaScript between the opening and closing tag. And so in JavaScript, a way to write a function, we write it with the function keyword, followed by a name that we want to call this function. So we could say hi, followed by parentheses. And after those parentheses, we'll have some curly braces. So that is the syntax of creating a function, using that function keyword, the name of the function, some parentheses, opening and closing, and then curlies. Within the parentheses will be parameters, or a parameter. So this is one parameter. You can add multiple. And you can call these whatever you want. You can call them potato if you wanted. And a way you would make this function run, because right now it won't do anything, is you would call that function. So say hi, and then parentheses to invoke it, telling it run this function. Because right now we're just declaring it, and we're saying it accepts a parameter called parameter, and it accepts another parameter called another parameter. So a way you can, when you invoke it, you want to pass arguments. So the first one, let's just say hi, and the other one, we'll say world. So when we pass an argument right here, this first one, it's assigned to this parameter. That was kind of confusing. Let's call this potato. It's assigned to this potato parameter. World would be assigned to this another parameter. And so in this function, if we called potato, because we called it right here, it would be hi. And if we said something with another parameter, it would be world. If we saw in the documentation, where did that go? That was in the script one. see how they did this alert, hello world? Let's go ahead and take that and let's put it in our page. And if we notice how that happened right now, alert, an embedded page on this says hello world. We made that happen by calling that function. And that function says, call this alert function, which does this in our web page. We can say, okay. But maybe I don't want to say hello world. Maybe I want it to say potato, which is our parameter, and another parameter. Oops. Okay, this keeps All right, we'll just stop at potato. As you can see, it pops up with the alert, and there is the hi. But when we alerted potato, which was our parameter, our first parameter, ends up saying hi because that was our first argument. So instead of just calling it right here, we want it to be on click of maybe this li or this li. So when somebody, a user on the web page, clicks on this, I want it to say alert hi. I want it to alert that hi message. So a way we could do that is on this li, we can add an attribute called on click and set it equal to a string. And in that string, we want to pass in the say hi function. Like that. So now, if we refresh the page, I'll save it and refresh. Did it do it? Oh yeah, we have to click on it. That's why. we added it as an on click to that learn HTML. So we learned some HTML and look, clicked, oh, it's undefined because we don't have an argument passed in. Our parameter was potato and we were alerting potato, but we didn't pass that in here. We can pass in like hi here and it would do it. Let's see. Let's save it. Let's hope it has updated. Might have to refresh it. Not going. All right. Maybe it has to be in a string. Let's see. Well, anyways, you would have to pass an argument here. I don't want to take too much time. This is not the common way that you'll usually write JavaScript. You'll usually write it in a JavaScript file and add JavaScript to add these on clicks and stuff instead of this way most of the time. So that's a tiny bit of JavaScript. You can totally use JavaScript as well to make where you can add these to our web page without having to write that HTML directly into our HTML document.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much, Emily. There's a couple of questions in the Q&A and chat, so I'll start with that. Isis wants to know, can you use PX instead of the % sign for the width in the CSS file, or will it always be % for width and height?
Nope, you can use anything. You can use pixels as well, but if we did 50 pixels, it would be really tiny, the width of it, and it wouldn't cover this whole thing. But if I wanted it to be like 50% of what the parent is, then the percentage. But yeah, you could totally change the pixels. If I said like 150 pix, like that.
And then also, can you use decimals when setting your width? So like 50.5%?
I don't know. Let's try it out. 50.
Yeah.
I've actually never done. Yeah, it looks like you can. I don't know if that is exactly 50.5% or if it goes to 50. I don't know.
Josue wants to know, do you need to have any coding experience to learn JavaScript or HTML and CSS?
No, you don't. You don't have to have any coding experience to learn it. Like, I didn't have any coding experience. You wouldn't be able to learn it if you didn't have any coding experience. So definitely just like try it out. Like open up CodePen and try creating some HTML and CSS on your own. And see it down here on the web page and look at those documentation. Like, so important. The documentation is going to help so much. There's also a lot of good videos and stuff out there as well if you're just getting started.
Someone wants to see if you can scroll through your HTML and CSS code so that they could take a picture of the code.
Yeah, and I'll also be sharing the link to this pen out as well.
Yeah, so we'll make sure you can get that, Michelle. No stress. And it'll be the one that Emily just did today. Jennifer wants to know, is this format what it's like in Flatiron School classes, Flex or Live, or is this format specific to this workshop?
This is specific just to this workshop. We usually use VS Code. I can show you what VS Code looks like because we have some time. If I can, let me actually just open that up really quick. Yeah. Let's see. Gotta find my terminal really quick. So sorry. And let's open it. So this is a terminal. This is something you'll learn in the pre-work here at Flatiron School, is like how to navigate through it and stuff. For right now, I'm gonna navigate quickly through mine. I'm not gonna explain all this, but we're gonna go ahead and open up. Go ahead and open up what I just created. So this is what we use. You can see this as well, right? My terminal.
Yeah,
and
it's
now
just
my
really
VS
small.
Code.
Yeah. The VS Code is popping up now.
Cool.
There you go.
Yeah, so this is Visual Studio Code. This is what we use at Flatiron School. In this case, like for our example today, we would have like an index.html file, and this is where we would write all of our HTML. Maybe like a CSS file. So we write all of our CSS here. And also we could have like a JavaScript file here as well. But VS Code, Visual Studio Code, you could totally download it. It's just a text editor, and you can play around with adding that as well. And what's really cool about this also is, let's see, you can just drag this HTML file into the web browser, and you can open up that HTML file on the web just by dragging and dropping it from VS Code.
That's awesome.
So yeah, really cool.
Jose wants to know, what is the basic knowledge that you have to be able to get hired as a front-end developer?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of different like things out there. I would say the program teaches you like everything you need to know to be a front-end developer and a back-end developer. So full stack. I mean, we're partially there on full stack development with that HTML, CSS. Now you just got to learn that JavaScript portion.
Yeah. Jennifer asks, do students have a better learning experience using Mac versus PC? And is there a learning curve if you're not a Mac user? That's like an added challenge to Flatiron students.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So, yeah, I went through the program. I had Mac, and I didn't have like any issues at all with my computer on Mac. And then when I became a coach, like I experienced all these like environment issues with other people like that were going through the program, like on Mac and a Windows. I would say most of the time people have a lot of trouble with the Windows more that we gotta sell, because you're gonna have to get a subsystem Linux on your computer. Most people have a lot of trouble with that, with environment setup. And I would say, but either will work. Like I've learned a lot on Windows, and I actually got a Windows computer just so I can help debug those environment issues, and I can know how like everything's set up in the environment. So I'd say either one works. You could totally get through the program with both. And I would say, that's what I always tell my people that have Windows is, you're experiencing these environment issues now, which is good because this is a learning environment here at Flatiron School, versus once you're out and you're a developer, now you have to learn that whole new skill, which is kind of like what happened to me, is I didn't get to experience that. And so sometimes WSL might be a little bit better just because you get that experience. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Marlon wants to know, how is VS Code different from CodePen?
Yeah, okay, so CodePen is in the web browser. It's like a, what do you call it, IDE in the web browser. VS Code is just a text editor on your computer. You're just creating these files, and you can open up that HTML file in the browser. And then that browser will read your HTML that you opened up.
Awesome.
So
Cyrus asked in the Q&A, what pace do you suggest we go at to avoid overwhelming of information? And at Flatiron School, you know, obviously we have our most aggressive pace is 15 weeks, but you can do it up until 60 weeks. So there's a 20, 40, and 60 week option as well. And you know, I don't like to suggest to folks like what pace works best for them. However, you know, I would take in certain things into consideration. So like if you can dedicate like 9 to 5, 9 to 6 every day, plus homework in the evening and maybe some weekend work for 15 weeks, I think it's really beneficial. But if you have a job or you, you know, just work better at certain hours of the day, or, you know, you need some open time due to living situations, then the flex option is probably the better option for you. And then you can choose the pace that you're interested in. So you can set the pace of 20 weeks, 40 weeks or 60 weeks. And let's say you start with 20 and you realize that you're not keeping the pace, you can change that pace to 40 or 60 weeks, depending on what you're going through. So it's really a self like determination there. Like, I think I can do this here. Is the flex option primarily self-taught via modules or instructor-led? It is, we have instructors for flex option, but there's a lot of autonomy in the learning. So you'll basically have recorded lectures that you can watch and like learn on your own. And then there's always office hours and things like that where you can like connect with an instructor directly. How young can you be to attend? Great question. Anything over 18 is fine by us. And Jennifer wants to know, are there alum we can talk to who have taken the slower pace course and how it went for them? I don't have any alums like on, you know, retainer or anything that you can reach out to. However, if you do a quick LinkedIn search for maybe your city or Flatiron School, you can find alum all over the place. And we also have some alumni blogs on our website that might be able to help you with that. TR says, do you guys have any tips for learning coding? Like what stuff to memorize, what to not, how to not get pulled into topics that don't end up being useful? Emily, I'm going to leave that one to you.
Ooh, that's tough. Wait, what was the question again? Can you repeat it again? Yeah, portions of that.
Do you have tips for learning coding? Like what stuff to memorize, what to not, how to not get pulled into topics that don't end up being useful?
Okay, one thing, know your learning style. That's one big thing I always recommend. Like, and that might take some time to know, but like, do you learn best by watching somebody? Do you learn best by watching and implementing? Do you learn best by reading? Like, know that learning style. That will help so much. Determine whether you should go to YouTube videos or you go to the documentation. But I definitely would recommend looking at documentation and getting comfortable with that. Like either looking at the examples in the documentation or reading the documentation. With what to memorize and what not is mainly like know those concepts like creating variables and that kind of stuff. A lot of the stuff you could look up though, like syntax. Like if you forget the syntax of an HTML tag, you can totally look that up. And yeah, I'm not really sure if I answered that whole question.
Yeah, I think you did a great job. Naoko asked, are you operating in-person classes? And the answer is yes, in select cities. So right now we have in-person classes in New York, and I believe the upcoming cohort starting in Denver. But keep an eye out on flatironschool.com for any like in-person classes in any of our other cities that we list. In the flex option, will there be options for paired programming? And I believe so. I think the major thing is everybody works at their own pace, but we all have access to a Flatiron School Slack community. So with your cohort mates or people who are in, let's say, software engineering or data science or whatever discipline you are choosing, there will be an ability for you to like keep in touch and engage with students there, and perhaps you guys could work together to pair program. And Christy asked a question a long time ago, but I wanted to wait until the end. Your homepage on Chrome, Emily, is awesome. Can you share where you got it from?
Yeah, it's Momentum, I think. It's a Chrome extension. Let's see, Momentum.
Yeah.
Chrome. Let's see. Yeah. If you search Momentum Chrome, you can go ahead and add it. Right now I'd remove it, but if you add it, and it'll add that for you. And I love it. I saw somebody else had it, and I was like, I need that. And every day it's a different picture and a different quote and everything. So
I love it.
Yeah, definitely recommend it. And you can do what's your main focus for the day here. Also, there's like a to-do list option stuff. All that's free and included with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then two final questions that I see. Sorry, we're all getting close to time, but Jennifer asked, is the Slack community for all students? Yes, you become a part of one of our Flatiron school communities on Slack as soon as you start pre-work, if you get committed and you're on your way to matriculate, and then you're available in Slack as a current student, and then there's also an alumni Slack channel. So there's plenty of ways to build and maintain community at Flatiron School. And Cyrus wants to know, what was your first occupation job as a programmer, Emily, and what was something you felt was more important than you thought going into the job, like once you became a programmer?
So I mainly just teach like right now, but I also do some freelancing where I create websites for people I know. And so like that's what I do it like on the side, and mainly here teaching. But I don't know if there was anything that I thought was more important before going into it. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. It's a great question.
All right. Well, those are the final two questions we have for this evening. We want to thank you all for being here and spending time with us on this wonderful Thursday evening. If you're out east, stay warm. If you're out west, stay chill. And we will see you at the next event. Cheers and have a good night.
Thank you.